We've never really reviewed a phone before, mostly because we're a video game show and we really don't do phones. But recently, LG decided to send us the LG G4. Now it's a great phone, it makes good calls, does good text messaging, and actually has a pretty incredible camera that can record at like 4K for video files and stuff. Neat. But still, we don't care. What we do care about is how it plays video games. So let's take a look at that. I'm a recent convert. I just got out of iPhones and picked up a Nexus 5, which honestly is one of the best cell phones I've ever owned. I love that thing to death. And this phone here, which was sent in, kind of impressed me in a bunch of different ways. See, I think gaming on the Android is better because you can emulate things and do a whole bunch of things that Apple won't allow you to do. And what's really cool about this phone, that my Nexus phone kind of has, is that my Nexus phone has buttons for sleep and volume adjustment on the left and right, but this phone here doesn't have that. See, there's no buttons on the face and no buttons on the side. In fact, the only buttons you'll find on the phone are right at the back below the lens. And these buttons kind of get out of your way when you're playing games just using the screen. So you're never really afraid to put this phone to sleep while you're playing anything, which is a kind of nice feature. The phone is loaded with a pretty cool screen called a quantum IPS screen. Essentially what that means is that it has high viewing angles, and the quantum nature is that it goes above 1080p, which is pretty neat. This phone here actually has such a high resolution screen that I think it's probably one of the highest resolution screens you can game on for its form factor. Now, having a high resolution screen is nice, but that doesn't mean anything if the phone itself can't process the images on there. And that's why this phone is loaded with a 6-core processor with 3 GB of RAM. We ran a bunch of benchmark tests on this phone to kind of see how far the graphics could be pushed, and it could do quite a lot. We also had a bunch of emulators running on here, and it was capable of running everything, including Star Fox on Super Nintendo, Sega CD, Sega Genesis, and just a whole bunch of others, and that was really cool. But one thing we tried to see exactly how good this processor was we tried to emulate a GameCube on here, and unfortunately, well, even at 6 cores at 3 GB of RAM, you couldn't run a GameCube really well, and that sucks. But if you really wanted to run a lot of really cool games that are made for the Android marketplace, well, they will run at the resolution, as long as the game is capable of doing it, of this screen, which is really neat. See, we were playing this one benchmark thing that Unreal made, and it looks fantastic at its native resolution of this phone. And at a frame rate that's pretty close to 60 frames per second, you're looking at some pretty intense 3D visuals on here. But, as I'm pretty sure a lot of you know, a lot of the games you'd be playing on a cell phone really don't utilize really intense graphics. In fact, some of the best games on the phone are simplified affairs that just use very simple touch interfaces. Still though, if you run into a game like Angry Birds Go, this thing's gonna run it with flying colors. And honestly, with a really high resolution. Overall, I gotta say that this is a pretty good phone. There's a lot of things about it that I like. Not having all those buttons all over the place is actually something I kind of prefer now that I've used this phone. Having a removable battery is a big deal too, because honestly that's becoming a rarity in the market. And you can also have expandable memory on here for up to 1 TB of space, which is insane, but I guess that's the kind of stuff you need nowadays. And if you're gonna be recording 4K video on it, you might need it for that as well. But if you're a fan of emulation and you want a little emulation machine that's just portable and has a high resolution screen, this might be the way to go. With a 1 TB backup, you could store pretty much everything you'd ever want from the retro era. So I gotta say, a neat phone for gamers, and they're probably not gonna sell it that way. But if you're into video games and you want something that can run them, this might be the way to go.